She was sleeping in 8A when the captain asked if any combat pilots were on board. Sunlight reflected off the glass buildings of New York, and the streets below were already busy with cars, taxis, and people rushing to their work. But inside Terminal 4 of the airport, the mood was different, slightly calmer, punctuated by the occasional announcements over the intercom and the soft hum of rolling luggage. Among the sea of travelers moving quickly to their gates, one woman walked with a quiet confidence, her eyes scanning the departure boards as if she had memorized their every detail. Her name was Captain Alina Harper. She had once been known in military circles as one of the most skilled fighter pilots of her generation, a person who could handle the most dangerous situations with precision and calm. But today, she was just another passenger in a crowd, carrying a small rolling suitcase and a standard black backpack. Her flight was a routine journey, a simple commercial trip back home after attending a military training seminar in the city. To anyone looking at her, she seemed ordinary, tired from the long day, ready to rest and return to her quiet life. Alina's path through the airport was smooth, almost practiced. She had spent years in high-stress environments where timing and attention to detail were critical. Even small things, like reading a boarding gate number or noticing a delay on a flight screen, were second nature to her. She paused briefly at a coffee shop, not for herself but out of habit, watching the barista prepare drinks with calm, steady movements, reminding her of the discipline she once relied on every day in the cockpit. Finally, she made her way to gate B12, joining the line of passengers waiting to board. The boarding process was typical, filled with soft chatter and the low drone of children playing nearby. She smiled politely at a young mother struggling with two restless toddlers, her own hands recalling the countless moments of focus and patience she had learned over years of military service. Despite the ordinary setting, a small part of Alina's mind remained alert, scanning the environment with instincts that had never fully left her. It was a quiet awareness, subtle, almost invisible, but it was there. As she settled into her seat on the plane, 14B, she took a moment to look around the cabin. The rows of seats were filling quickly. Business travelers typed on laptops, students scrolled through their phones, and a few passengers leaned back, eyes closed, letting themselves drift into a short nap before takeoff. The hum of the air conditioning mixed with soft conversations, the occasional clatter of a drink cart, and the steady voice of the flight attendants welcoming everyone aboard. For a moment, Alina allowed herself to relax, the weight of her past life set aside as she prepared for a simple flight. But even in this calm, her mind could not fully rest. Memories surfaced, images of fighter jets cutting through clouds at impossible speeds, missions where every second counted, and situations where a single miscalculation could mean disaster. She remembered her first solo flight in a military jet, the thrill of control, the responsibility of carrying not only her own life but the lives of others in her hands. She thought about her team, pilots she had trusted completely, some of whom she would never see again. These memories were like shadows, lingering in the corners of her mind, a quiet reminder of a life that had shaped her completely. The takeoff was smooth, the plane climbing steadily above the city, leaving the sprawling streets behind and rising into the clear blue sky. Alina leaned back in her seat, closing her eyes for a few minutes, allowing herself a brief moment of rest. She thought of home, of the quiet apartment she shared with her cat, and the simple pleasures she now cherished: morning coffee, a good book, and the peaceful streets near her neighborhood. Life had slowed down for her in ways she had wanted, and yet there was always a small, restless part of her that remembered the rush of the skies and the call of responsibility. Passengers around her continued to settle in. A man nearby flipped through a newspaper, frowning occasionally at the news. A teenage girl in the row ahead of her listened to music through oversized headphones, tapping her fingers to the beat. Flight attendants moved carefully through the aisles, checking seat belts, stowing luggage, and offering smiles that were polite but practiced. The cabin had the soft rhythm of routine, yet Alina's trained eyes caught every detail. The slight tension in the pilot's posture visible through the cockpit window, the glimmer of sunlight on the plane's wings, and the subtle change in the hum of the engines as they adjusted. Altitude. It was then that something unusual began to unfold. A slight disturbance rippled through the cabin, subtle at first, almost imperceptible. A few passengers murmured quietly to themselves, adjusting their seats or glancing nervously out the windows. The flight attendants exchanged brief, concerned glances, their movements becoming just slightly more hurried. The man with the newspaper looked around, frowning, while the teenage girl removed her headphones, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. Elena, still seated and observing, felt that familiar spark of alertness awaken inside her. Her heart did not race, but her senses sharpened. She remembered countless situations like this, moments when subtle cues, too quiet, too still, or too tense, signaled the start of something unexpected. She did not know what it was yet, but she trusted her instincts. Then over the intercom, the voice of the captain broke the usual calm. "Is there any combat-trained personnel on board?" The announcement was clear, commanding, and filled with urgency. A hush fell over the cabin. Passengers looked around at each other in confusion, whispers spreading through the rows. The flight attendants paused mid-step, uncertainty in their eyes. The world inside the plane had shifted from ordinary to tense in an instant. Elena's eyes opened fully. She felt a strange calm, the kind that came only when her training kicked in. Slowly, she reached into her bag, pulling out her identification and credentials, ready to verify her experience if needed. She was no longer just a passenger. She was someone with skills that might be called upon to protect dozens of lives in the air. The weight of responsibility, once again, settled comfortably on her shoulders. Passengers continued to react with fear and curiosity. Some whispered, some gasped, others simply froze, unsure of what to do. A few reached for their phones, likely attempting to call loved ones or record the moment. Amidst the uncertainty, Elena stood and approached the flight attendant nearest her. With a calm, steady voice, she identified herself and explained her background, mentioning her years as a combat pilot and her experience handling high-pressure situations. The flight attendant, clearly relieved to find someone with such expertise, quickly relayed the information to the cockpit. Elena could feel the tension in the cabin begin to shift slightly, a sense of hope replacing some of the fear. She returned to her seat briefly, mentally preparing for whatever might come next. She reviewed her knowledge, her instincts, and her ability to make quick decisions, knowing that the next few minutes could be critical. Outside the plane, the sky remained deceptively calm. The sun continued to climb, clouds drifted lazily across the horizon, and the world seemed unchanged. But inside the aircraft, something significant was about to happen. The combination of her skills, training, and experience placed her at the center of a moment that would test everything she had learned over her career. She understood that in situations like this, calm observation was as important as action, and that every second counted. As the plane continued its journey toward the Atlantic, Elena thought back on the choices that had led her here. She remembered leaving active military duty, the quiet transition to civilian life, and the small pleasures she had come to enjoy. Yet deep down, she knew that moments like this, moments where ordinary life collided with extraordinary circumstances, were what defined her. She did not seek recognition or fame. Her motivation was simple: do the right thing, protect those in her care, and act when others could not. Passengers continued to watch and wait, unaware of the full extent of her experience. Some were still anxious, some curious, and others simply tense with uncertainty. The cabin hummed with the quiet sounds of anticipation. Elena, meanwhile, centered herself, drawing on years of practice, preparing for whatever challenge lay ahead. She understood that the next step would require clarity, decisiveness, and courage, the very qualities that had earned her respect as a combat pilot years before. In the minutes that followed, she would become more than just a passenger. She would step into a role that few could imagine, facing a challenge that demanded her full attention and expertise. The ordinary flight had transformed into something extraordinary, and the story of the lost pilot who might save everyone on board was only just beginning. The hum of the engines had always been a familiar sound to Elena Harper. She had heard it countless times in the cockpit of her fighter jets, where every vibration, every subtle shift in tone could mean something critical. On this flight, the sound was ordinary, blending with the low murmur of passengers and the soft click of seatbelts. Yet even amid the routine, something felt off. It began with a slight vibration, almost too small for anyone else to notice. Elena felt it immediately, the kind of subtle warning that only years of experience could detect. The plane wobbled briefly, then steadied as if nothing had happened. Most passengers adjusted in their seats, unaware of the tiny shift, but Alina's instincts told her to stay alert. She remembered times in the military when the smallest irregularity had been the first sign of a serious problem, a hint of danger that could escalate in moments. Moments later, the cabin lights flickered slightly, a brief pulse that went unnoticed by many. Alina's eyes opened fully now. She scanned the cabin quickly, noting the tension beginning to spread among the passengers. Flight attendants whispered to each other quietly, glancing toward the cockpit with worry. The murmurs grew as the captain's voice came over the intercom again, more urgent this time. "Passengers, please remain calm," the captain said. "We are experiencing an unusual situation. If there are any trained pilots on board, please report to the cockpit immediately." The announcement sent a ripple through the cabin. Phones were lifted, hands trembled slightly, and children clutched at parents' arms. Most passengers had no idea what was happening or why the captain would need help in the middle of a commercial flight. But Alina understood. She felt that familiar adrenaline begin to surge, not panic but sharp focus. She rose from her seat, keeping her movements calm and deliberate. Around her, passengers turned to watch, some curious, some anxious. Flight attendants stepped aside to make a clear path to the cockpit. Alina reached the door and paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. She remembered every simulation, every training exercise, every high-pressure mission where quick decisions had made the difference between success and failure. Now all of that experience mattered. As she entered the cockpit, she saw the pilots exchanging tense glances. The captain was gripping the controls with a steady hand, though the tightness in his jaw betrayed the seriousness of the situation. The co-pilot's eyes flicked to the radar screens, then back to Alina, clearly relieved to see someone with real combat experience standing before them. Alina introduced herself quickly, her voice calm but firm. "Captain Harper, former fighter pilot. I've handled high-pressure situations and emergency maneuvers. How can I help?" The captain nodded, relief evident in his eyes. He explained the situation. A cargo plane traveling nearby in the same airspace had lost control. Its instruments were malfunctioning, and it was veering dangerously close to their flight path. The autopilot on their own plane had begun to behave unpredictably, likely influenced by turbulence and minor mechanical issues. Without careful intervention, the risk of collision was high, and the lives of everyone on both planes were at stake. Alina's mind raced, though she kept her outward composure. She immediately started assessing the situation. The first priority was to stabilize their aircraft, ensuring it stayed on course and avoided sudden shifts that could endanger passengers. She noted the altitude, the speed, and the direction of the other plane, calculating possible trajectories and escape paths in her mind. Every decision had to be precise, every maneuver carefully timed. Meanwhile, in the cabin, passengers sensed the tension even if they did not understand the technical details. The soft chatter had disappeared. Some gripped their armrests nervously, while others whispered prayers. Flight attendants moved swiftly but quietly, checking that seat belts were secure and calming the most panicked passengers. A sense of collective anxiety filled the air, invisible yet heavy. Alina coordinated with the cockpit crew, giving clear, concise instructions. She suggested small, controlled adjustments to the autopilot settings and advised the captain on timing for minor course corrections. Her calm and authoritative presence reassured the pilots, and slowly, the immediate danger began to be managed. But the threat was not over. The cargo plane continued its erratic movement, drifting unpredictably through the skies. Air traffic control, though helpful, could only provide guidance. In situations like this, decisions had to be made instantly, based on observation and instinct. Alina focused completely, blocking out everything else. The worried faces of passengers, the hum of engines, even her own fatigue. There was only the plane, the people on board, and the need to act with precision. She thought back to her military training, recalling exercises that had seemed impossible at the time. Each drill had prepared her for moments like this, training her to remain calm when others would panic. She remembered her commanding officer's words, "A pilot's greatest weapon is a steady mind. Even in chaos, your focus can save lives." Those words guided her now, giving her clarity and purpose. Minutes passed like hours. Every second mattered. Alina instructed the co-pilot to adjust their altitude slightly, then to hold it steady. She monitored the cargo plane's trajectory, predicting its next move and advising the captain on timing for evasive action. Slowly, she began to gain control over the situation, steering the plane along a safer path while keeping passengers unaware of the near disaster unfolding above the clouds. Her presence in the cockpit transformed the atmosphere. What had been tension and fear turned into careful, calculated action. The captain relied on her guidance, following her instructions with trust. The co-pilot, initially uncertain, now moved with purpose, executing maneuvers with precision. Even the air traffic controllers, who had been monitoring multiple planes at once, acknowledged the skill displayed from within this commercial flight. In the cabin, the passengers still sensed something extraordinary was happening, though they couldn't see it. A mother comforted her young child, whispering softly to calm their fears. A businessman adjusted his tie, staring nervously at the window. A student clutched her notebook, her curiosity piqued by the sudden hush and unusual announcements. All around, the ordinary moments of travel had been replaced by an invisible tension, held at bay by the unseen hero in the cockpit. Elena kept her mind focused on the calculations, the adjustments, and the decisions that could save hundreds of lives. Her training kicked in automatically, guiding her through a sequence of maneuvers that would have taken years for an ordinary pilot to attempt. She knew that even small errors could be disastrous, but she also knew that hesitation would be far worse. Every command she gave was precise, every move intentional, every thought directed toward keeping everyone on board safe. As the minutes continued, the immediate threat began to stabilize. The cargo plane's trajectory was gradually corrected, and their own flight path steadied. Elena did not allow herself to relax entirely. She remained vigilant, aware that in situations like this, danger could return in an instant. Her calm, measured presence in the cockpit created a ripple effect, helping everyone around her act with clarity and purpose. By now, the passengers were beginning to notice small signs of relief. The initial turbulence had passed, and the strange vibrations of the plane had subsided. Flight attendants moved through the aisles with a slightly lighter step, offering reassurance with gentle smiles. Some passengers exchanged quiet words, guessing at what might have caused the unusual announcements. Yet, most had no idea of the danger that had loomed so close, or of the remarkable skill that had guided them through it. Elena finally allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. Her mind remained sharp, her focus intact, but she could feel the tension easing. She glanced at the pilots, offering a small nod of acknowledgement. Together, they had navigated one of the most dangerous moments of the flight with calm and precision. The cockpit, once filled with worry and uncertainty, now radiated confidence and controlled determination. Even as the plane continued its journey across the sky, Elena's thoughts drifted briefly to the lives she had touched, not just in this moment, but throughout her career. She remembered missions where she had rescued fellow pilots, guided teams through impossible scenarios, and made split-second decisions that had changed outcomes. Each experience had prepared her for today, and now she had used that training to protect passengers who had no idea of the danger they had faced. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting golden light across the clouds. The plane sailed steadily through the atmosphere, a symbol of safety restored through skill and courage. Elena remained at her post, vigilant, ready for anything else that might arise. She knew that while this crisis had been managed, the true test of a pilot's skill was always readiness, the ability to act decisively when ordinary life suddenly became extraordinary. Passengers began to relax, unaware of how close they had come to disaster. Children dozed quietly, adults returned to their reading or conversations, and the hum of the engines became ordinary once more. Yet for Elena, the day had revealed the truth she had always known. Courage, skill, and calm under pressure were not just traits, they were responsibilities, and in moments like these, they could mean the difference between life and death. The plane continued its journey, safely on course, but the story of what had just unfolded was far from over. Elena had taken her place at the center of an extraordinary event, and the actions she had taken would mark the beginning of a legend, one that would follow her quietly, unseen by most, yet known to those who understood the skies and the heroes who soared within them. Even as the plane sailed steadily above the clouds, the tension in the cockpit was far from over. Elena Harper, seated beside the captain, remained fully alert. She had stabilized their flight path and avoided the immediate danger from the nearby cargo plane, but her instincts told her that the skies were never truly safe. Out of her fighter pilot years came a lesson she never forgot. The skies could change in a single second, and vigilance was the key to survival. Radar screens displayed a series of readings that demanded attention. The autopilot had responded to her adjustments, but a minor warning light flashed briefly, signaling that one of the plane's navigation systems was slightly off. It was not a catastrophic problem, but Alina knew that even a small malfunction at high altitude could escalate if left unchecked. She instructed the co-pilot calmly, "Hold altitude and speed steady. I'll monitor the instruments. Don't make any sudden moves." Her voice was calm, yet every word carried authority, the kind that comes from years of commanding high-stakes missions. As she scanned the instruments, air traffic control's voice came through over the radio. "Flight 472, be advised, there's an unidentified aircraft approaching your flight path. Maintain course and altitude until further notice." Alina's eyes narrowed. "Show me the coordinates," she said, leaning closer to the radar display. The captain passed her the data, and she immediately began calculating the potential trajectory of the unidentified aircraft. It was moving unpredictably, weaving slightly as if testing their position. Although it posed no immediate threat to the passengers, Alina knew that in aviation, even small miscalculations could quickly turn dangerous. She began formulating a plan. Using subtle adjustments, she guided the commercial plane to a slightly higher altitude, enough to create a safe buffer between them and the approaching aircraft. She monitored the instruments closely, her hands poised to make further corrections if needed. Her calm demeanor reassured the pilots, who had now grown dependent on her instincts and knowledge. Even seasoned commercial pilots could feel the difference that Alina brought to the cockpit. Outside the cockpit, the passengers remained mostly unaware of the unfolding situation. They noticed subtle shifts, a slight tilt of the plane during course adjustments or the occasional announcement from the captain, but most trusted that the crew was handling everything. Some whispered anxiously to each other, while others returned to their devices, unaware of how narrowly their lives had been saved. Alina's work, invisible to them, was keeping every single passenger safe. Suddenly, another set of alerts came in, this time more urgent. The radar indicated that the unidentified aircraft was moving closer, and its path seemed to intersect with their flight trajectory. Air traffic control advised evasive maneuvers, but with multiple planes in close proximity, any sudden movement could have dangerous consequences. Alina's mind worked faster than ever. Years of experience in fighter jets, navigating hostile skies, and handling impossible scenarios gave her the edge she needed. She instructed the co-pilot, "Increase speed gradually, maintain heading slightly to the right. Watch the altitude carefully. We don't want any sharp movements." Her instructions were precise, measured, and designed to create just enough distance without alarming the passengers or triggering the plane's automated systems. As the minutes passed, the unidentified aircraft continued its approach. From her vantage point in the cockpit, Alina could see how small adjustments could change the entire situation. She used subtle maneuvers, exploiting every variable she knew from her military experience. Tiny corrections in speed, minor tilts in angle, and careful monitoring of wind currents, all combined to keep the commercial plane out of harm's way. Meanwhile, the radar operators tracking the skies noticed the extraordinary skill displayed. They saw a commercial aircraft navigating a near collision with the precision of a fighter jet. Air traffic controllers exchanged astonished looks and quickly alerted nearby military units. Within minutes, 2 F-22 fighter jets were dispatched to monitor the situation. Their mission was simple: identify the anomaly and ensure safety. The moment the F-22 pilots locked on to the radar signature of Alina's aircraft, they were stunned. They saw the plane maneuvering with a skill and precision that far exceeded normal commercial operations. Subtle adjustments, split-second timing, and flawless execution, everything about the flight indicated someone highly trained was in control. "Who is flying that plane?" one pilot asked over the radio, disbelief in his voice. "It's like it has a ghost in control." From inside the cockpit, Alina remained focused. She was aware of the F-22s now nearby, but she did not need their help. Her priority was the safety of her passengers, and every second counted. She continued to guide the plane, making micro-adjustments to maintain stability while preparing for any further developments. Her eyes never left the instruments, her mind calculating every possibility. The tension in the cockpit remained high, but Alina's calm presence kept the crew grounded. The captain, now fully trusting her judgment, followed her lead without hesitation. The co-pilot, once nervous, moved with confidence, executing Alina's instructions flawlessly. Together, they became a synchronized unit, handling the skies with precision that few could imagine possible in a commercial airliner. As the minutes ticked by, the unidentified aircraft began to change course, likely realizing that the commercial plane was no ordinary passenger flight. Alina noticed the shift and adjusted the planes, heading slightly to the left, maintaining a safe buffer. Air traffic control confirmed the trajectory was now stable and the immediate danger had passed. Yet Alina remained vigilant, knowing that the skies could change at any moment. The F-22 pilots, impressed by what they witnessed, began referring to the mysterious pilot in the commercial plane as Wraith. The name spread quickly among the units monitoring the airspace. Wraith, a ghost, a figure who moved with unmatched skill, invisible yet powerful, and capable of controlling the situation with ease. Alina had earned a reputation in the skies without anyone on the plane even knowing her true identity. Inside the cabin, passengers were beginning to notice a subtle change. The plane felt more stable, the hum of the engine smoother, and the small tremors that had caused anxiety were gone. Flight attendants moved through the aisles, offering reassurance with calm smiles. No one realized how close they had come to disaster, or how expertly their lives had been protected. Alina, aware of the F-22s trailing at a distance, maintained her composure. She knew that military pilots would continue to observe, but she remained focused solely on the plane and her care. Every maneuver she made was calculated, precise, and measured, designed to keep passengers safe while avoiding unnecessary panic. The minutes stretched on, but Alina's experience allowed her to remain calm. She reflected briefly on the years she had spent in fighter jets, the missions that had tested her courage and skill, and the moments when she had faced life-or-death situations. Those experiences were not just memories. They were tools she now used to protect ordinary lives in an extraordinary situation. She guided the plane through a series of minor adjustments, each designed to keep them on course while maintaining maximum safety. She coordinated with air traffic control, confirming every move, and monitored the F-22s in the distance. Their presence was a silent reassurance. They were watching, ready to intervene if necessary, but Alina did not need assistance. She was fully capable of handling the challenge herself. Passengers remained largely unaware of the full scope of the danger. A mother comforted her child, whispering softly as the little one dozed. A businessman glanced out the window, noticing the smooth flight but oblivious to the unseen skill controlling the aircraft. Children played quietly, some still tired from early morning flights. The ordinary moments of travel continued, shielded by the extraordinary expertise in the cockpit. Alina's focus never wavered. She monitored instruments, adjusted headings, and made calculations with the precision of a seasoned fighter pilot. Every decision she made was guided by experience, instinct, and an unwavering commitment to the safety of everyone on board. She had become the invisible guardian, the wraith in the sky, unseen yet fully in control. Hours seemed to pass like minutes. Each moment required attention, but Alina's confidence in her abilities allowed her to maintain focus without fatigue. She had been tested in ways few could imagine, and now, her training had transformed her into the protector of 183 lives. The plane, once at risk, now sailed smoothly, guided by her skillful hands. As the immediate threat receded, Alina allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. The F-22 pilots, still monitoring from a distance, exchanged amazed glances and began reporting her maneuvers up the chain of command. "That pilot in the commercial plane, she's extraordinary. Call sign, Wraith," one said. Inside the plane, the passengers began to relax, their nervous whispers replaced by calm conversations. Flight attendants moved with confidence, and the hum of the engines returned to a soothing background sound. No one knew the story of the skilled pilot who had quietly guided them through danger, but Alina had ensured that every life on board was safe. Even as she relaxed slightly, Alina knew that her work was not yet complete. She remained vigilant, ready for any sudden changes, monitoring instruments, adjusting course, and keeping passengers safe. Her calm determination and unmatched skill had earned her the silent admiration of military pilots and the quiet gratitude of those who had unknowingly been saved. The plane continued its journey across the sky, steady, controlled, and safe. Elena, known now as Wraith to those tracking her from above, had demonstrated that true skill and courage were timeless. Even outside the military, in the confines of a commercial flight, she had proven that a hero could emerge in the most unexpected places, unseen but entirely in control. The plane had finally cleared the immediate dangers of the sky. The cargo plane that had caused earlier concern was now safely off course, and the F-22s that had monitored their flight maintained a steady distance, watching silently. Elena Harper, known to them as Wraith, allowed herself a brief moment to breathe, but only briefly. She knew that landing a commercial plane after such a tense journey required precision, calm, and steady focus. One small mistake now could undo all the careful work she had done to protect 183 lives. Inside the cabin, the passengers were beginning to sense that something extraordinary had happened, even if they could not know the full story. The hum of the engines was smoother now, turbulence almost non-existent. Flight attendants moved quietly but confidently through the aisles, checking on passengers, offering water, and adjusting seatbelts for landing. Some passengers exchanged whispers about the unusual announcements and the tense moments earlier, their imaginations filling in the gaps. Yet none knew that the woman who had quietly sat in their midst was the very reason they were safe. Elena's eyes remained fixed on the cockpit instruments. The altimeter, airspeed indicator, and navigation systems all required careful monitoring. She communicated clearly with the captain and co-pilot, issuing instructions in her calm, authoritative tone. Begin gradual descent. Keep heading steady, adjust flaps slowly, and monitor cabin pressure. Each command was deliberate, designed to ensure a smooth and safe landing without startling passengers. The F-22s, still nearby, observed the maneuvers with admiration. From above, it was clear that Elena was in total control. She guided the aircraft with the precision of a military pilot, blending skillful navigation with careful attention to passenger safety. Every movement was calculated, every adjustment minor yet effective. The term Wraith had spread among the military airspace controllers and pilots, a fitting name for someone who moved through the skies with quiet mastery, almost invisible yet undeniably powerful. As the plane descended through the clouds, passengers began to notice the gentle shifts in altitude. Some clutched the armrests with anticipation, others gazed out the windows at the changing sky. The flight attendants, now fully aware of the situation and reassured by Elena's calm presence, spoke softly to passengers, keeping everyone relaxed. A sense of trust began to spread through the cabin. They did not know her name, but they sensed competence, a quiet authority that made them feel safe despite the earlier tension. Elena remained entirely focused on the task at hand. She adjusted speed and altitude, communicated clearly with the control tower, and coordinated with the captain to ensure a smooth approach. Every decision was guided by her years of experience as a combat pilot, where split-second timing and careful calculation could save lives. She recalled past missions, narrow escapes, impossible maneuvers, and moments of high-stakes decision-making, and realized that each had prepared her for this very moment. The airport below grew closer with each passing minute. Runways, taxiways, and surrounding airspace required careful attention. Elena's skill was evident in the way she handled the descent. She instructed the co-pilot on exact headings, adjusted flaps with precision, and monitored the autopilot closely. Even the smallest turbulence was accounted for, ensuring a steady approach. The F-22s continued to provide oversight, but she did not need them. The plane was under her complete control. Passengers, anticipation grew as the city lights and airport infrastructure became visible. Some whispered quietly about the unusual situation earlier, speculating on the reasons for the captain's announcements. Others tried to distract children, offering quiet words of comfort. Yet amidst the ordinary scene, the extraordinary presence of Elena Harper ensured that everything was proceeding safely. Her calm determination was the invisible thread holding the journey together. As the plane lined up with the runway, Elena instructed precise adjustments. Reduce speed gradually. Maintain centerline alignment. Steady descent. Flaps at 30. The captain followed her commands, trusting completely in her guidance. The co-pilot assisted with small corrections, each action harmonized with Alina's instructions. In that moment, they became a perfectly synchronized team, guiding the plane safely through the final stage of a tense flight. Touchdown approached, and Alina prepared for the critical moment of landing. The runway stretched ahead, lit with bright lights and guiding indicators. Every landing required attention, focus, and skill, but after the challenges they had faced in the air, this was the final test. She instructed subtle adjustments to the throttle and angle of descent. The plane touched down smoothly, tires meeting asphalt with minimal impact, and gradually slowed as she guided it along the runway. Passengers erupted into applause, some standing in their seats, others cheering softly. Flight attendants offered relieved smiles, understanding more than most passengers that a near crisis had passed. Alina allowed herself a small, quiet smile, acknowledging the relief without seeking recognition. She had acted out of duty, skill, and instinct, not for praise or acknowledgement. Yet the sense of accomplishment was undeniable. She had saved every life on board, and that knowledge was enough. Once the plane had safely taxied to the gate, ground crews and airport staff were ready, unaware of the extraordinary circumstances that had unfolded. Passengers disembarked, many thanking the flight attendants and pilots, unaware of the quiet hero who had ensured their safety. Alina gathered her belongings calmly, offering a polite smile to those who passed by. To them, she was just another traveler returning home. Meanwhile, in military circles, Alina's actions were being discussed with awe. The F-22 pilots who had monitored her maneuvers described her precision, calm, and effectiveness. The nickname Wraith had spread quickly, a testament to her ability to move through the skies with unmatched skill. Though she had performed this heroic act in the civilian world, her reputation as a pilot had only grown. Her skill had transcended the boundaries of military or civilian life, proving that true courage and expertise could emerge anywhere. Alina walked through the terminal quietly, reflecting on the day. She thought of the passengers who had unknowingly been saved, of the crew who had followed her guidance, and of the F-22 pilots who had watched from above. Her life had been full of high-pressure moments, but this flight had reminded her of why she had dedicated herself to mastering the skies. Her past as a combat pilot had prepared her to act decisively when ordinary life demanded extraordinary courage. As she exited the airport and stepped into the cool evening air, Alina felt a sense of calm satisfaction. She had performed her duty with focus, skill, and integrity, protecting lives without seeking recognition. The nickname Wraith might follow her in the military world, but in her personal life, she remained the same quiet, determined woman who preferred a life of simplicity and reflection. Later, in the privacy of her home, Alina sat quietly, letting the events of the day sink in. She thought about the passengers, the crew, and the extraordinary moments that had unfolded above the clouds. Saving 183 lives was no small feat, yet she felt no need for accolades or attention. Her satisfaction came from knowing she had acted correctly, used her training effectively, and ensured the safety of those who depended on her, even unknowingly. The story of that flight would continue in whispers among pilots and air traffic controllers, a tale of skill and heroism that few outside the aviation world would fully understand. She had become a legend in the skies, a figure whose calm, precise actions earned her the name Wraith. Yet for Alina, the true reward was quiet, the knowledge that she had made a difference, that lives had been preserved because of her skill, courage, and calm judgment. In the following days, media outlets would report on the flight, praising the crew for their professionalism. Passengers would share stories of how they felt safe and reassured, often unaware of just how close they had come to danger. The F-22 pilots would recount the incredible precision displayed by the commercial plane, keeping the nickname Wraith alive in military circles. Alina, as always, would remain in the background, content to let her actions speak louder than any recognition. The experience reaffirmed what she had always known. True heroism did not need applause, fame, or acknowledgement. It required preparation, focus, and the courage to act when others could not. That day, above the clouds, Alina Harper had become more than a pilot. She had become a guardian of life, a silent hero whose presence ensured the safety of 183 strangers. Even as life returned to normal, the lessons of that flight stayed with her. She continued her quiet routines, her walks, her coffee, and her books. But she knew that if ever the skies demanded her skill again, she would rise to the challenge. For Alina Harper, the woman known to the F-22 pilots as Wraith, heroism was not a choice. It was a responsibility, a calling, and a part of who she would always be. And so, the lost pilot who had quietly lived among ordinary people had proven that extraordinary courage could emerge in the most unexpected moments, saving lives, earning respect, and leaving a legacy that would be remembered in the skies long after the passengers had returned to their everyday lives.